he had gone to work for a different movie theater. He came to visit one day to watch a movie, and I was already manager, so I had my suit on. Managers wear suits, and he looked at me and goes, "Oh, you're a manager?" And I said, "What, you're not?" Right? Because he never did that.
Hello and welcome to Get Real 411, the podcast where real experts give you real helpful information about all things real estate. I'm Brad Rice.
And I'm Jamie Kavanaugh. And today we're speaking with Arturo Viramontes. Tito has been in the finance industry for nearly 2 decades, having spent most of his career in the car business. And in 2019, he transitioned to the mortgage industry. And then a few months ago, he joined the Amerifund team as a branch manager for our branch in Peoria, Arizona. And now he's joining us on the pod. Tito, how's it going?
Great. How are you guys?
Doing great.
Great. So Tito, thanks for joining us today. It's super kind of you. We got to know you a little bit over the last couple of months, but definitely want to share your story with our audience. And why don't you take a minute and just give us a little bit about your background and where you are today and how you came to join Amerifund.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me. So, I like you said, I came from the car business. My very first job actually was at Harkins. It's a local movie theater. My very first job at 16 years old, 6 months in, I became a supervisor. I remember when I started, one of the things that stuck with me, I was asking the current supervisor, "Hey, how do you become a supervisor?" And he told me, "Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about that." He goes, "You're nowhere near that. It's too much." And I'm like, "What?" So that's always been one of the things with me when people tell me I can't do something. Like, what do you mean I can't? Long story short, 6 months I became a supervisor. The next 6 months, so within a year, I actually became a manager of that movie theater. And moving forward, like, he had gone to work for a different movie theater. He came to visit one day to watch a movie, and I was already manager, so I had my suit on. Managers wear suits, and he looked at me and goes, "Oh, you're a manager?" And I said, "What, you're not?" Right? Because
Love
I
it.
never did that.
I love that.
I was there for 2 years. It really helped me learn a lot of the communication and speaking to people. When I was in high school, I was real shy, I didn't talk to nobody. But, just taking people's orders and talking to people and then becoming a supervisor and training people, that always stuck with me. I trained other people to become supervisors. I trained other people to become managers. Moving out of that is when I started my career in the car industry at 18 years old. I got hired at a local Nissan dealership selling new and used cars. That's where I started to pick up a lot on credit, on how to read credit reports. One of the advantages that I have is I speak Spanish. So in the car business, whenever there was a deal that got into the finance, you guys have all bought cars before, right? So when you go to the finance office,
Yep.
and they sell you all that other stuff.
Oh yeah, the upsell.
Right? Yeah. So even though I wasn't technically a finance manager, just because of the ability to speak Spanish, a lot of the finance guys would actually call me to the back and say, "Hey, can you help me spin this deal? Basically, can you help me pitch the products?" Right? I would translate. And it started out as translating. That's all I was doing. Eventually, I got the hang of it, and literally, the F&I guy would just stand behind me because he had the license. I didn't. He would stand behind me, and I would just pitch the deal to the bar and get them to buy all this back end stuff. To where the F&I guys used to look for me, even if it wasn't my car sale, like even if it wasn't my deal, they were like, "Where's Arturo? Does anybody know what Arturo's at?" And I got to do it so much that eventually, I started learning how to read the credit report. I started hanging out with the F&I guys in the back more than the sales guys in the front. Started learning all that. And then I went from one dealership to another, was there for the first 2 years at one local lot. I moved over to another one, and I specialized in the secondary department, which is essentially the bad credit, right? So and this is where I kind of started learning how to submit deals to different lenders and, guidelines and stuff like that. I then trained other people, to do that. And when I exited the car business, I ended up going to a local buy here, pay here, right? An independent lot. Because in the big dealerships, it's more about who you know versus what you know. I technically never made it to finance manager, producer, because other people were getting promoted ahead of me. Even though I had the knowledge and the experience, and obviously I was closing deals, it was just not the right environment. So I had somebody kind of advise me, said, "You know what, go to the small ponds, right? Go try local, buy here, pay here." And I ended up doing that for 10 years. So I was with that company for 10 years. And when I first started, he only had 4 little car lots, and we grew that in Arizona. He currently in Arizona is the largest independent car dealer in the state. He's got 13 dealerships. We grew it to about 13 title loan stores in Arizona. So very, very heavy on the independent side, learning credit. I was one of the people that came up with his underwriting guidelines when he opened up his own finance company. He's totally independent now. He doesn't rely on selling the deals to other lenders. He's not expecting a check. It's money in one pocket, money in the other, right? Buy here, pay here. And so I did that for like 10 years. We focused heavily on the Hispanic community. I also helped research and implement the software that he still uses to this day to run the dealership, the software, the CRMs, all that stuff. I trained the employees on how to do title loans. I trained them on how to do insurance. We did taxes for a while. So I was always teaching other people. And that's one of the things that I picked up in the car business. One of my mentors told me, don't be afraid to teach other people what you know. He's like, because some people are afraid of that because they're afraid that you're going to take their job. He's like, take my job, do it. He goes, if you take my job,
That's
you're going to make my
terrific.
job easier. He's like, so by all means, learn everything that I know and do it for yourself. And I've
What a great
taken that.
lesson.
Yeah, I've taken that into when I joined the mortgage industry in 2019. Is that's the kind of approach that I take with consumers, that educational stuff, all the training that I did, and I still do it for fellow LOs, but I turn that into the consumer part of it, where when I talk to somebody, especially first-time home buyers, like my conversations with them could be 30 minutes to an hour. It just depends on what kind of questions they have. But I take that educational approach into the mortgage business on both consumers and our loan officers here in the branch.
Well, now we know where you got that from. I'd love to just take a step backwards a little bit, just to the beginning. I didn't know that you worked at a movie theater. And from what you described, the timeline, you actually became a manager while you were still 16.
Actually, it was a year later, right? So 6 months and 6 months. So I got hired at 16, 6 months,
Gotcha.
became a supervisor.
Still very impressive. 17 years old as a manager. How did your subordinates feel about that? Were they your same age? Were they older?
It was actually a mix, right? So when I started, the movie theater has 6 levels. You got assistant managers, there's 4 levels, and you have your senior and your GM. I literally, when I got hired and read the employee handbook, there was one page that had the ladder to success.
Wait. You read the employee handbook.
Yeah.
So that means you know ours, and you can, like, I can refer people to you when they come aboard, because you'll know all 300 pages. Actually, in all seriousness, the thing that just keeps coming back to me as I hear about your journey in the different industries you worked in is a constant. And the constant is that you have some inherent leadership qualities and you're a teacher, and that you didn't let the bad leaders in your career stop you from getting to the next level. And so when we talk about leadership, I know for me, I was also a young leader, and just as much as sometimes we learn by the good example of others, I think we also learn from bad examples. I have been fortunate to have some amazing leaders, and I've been in situations where I didn't have the best leaders. Specifically, a situation where somebody was very threatened by me, and it was a female leader, unfortunately, at a time when there weren't a lot of female leaders. And instead of letting me soar, she clipped my wings at every opportunity. It sounds very much like the supervisor that was there when you started at the movie theater felt the same way. And I think as leaders, it's really important to share everything you have and build the next leader, and then wake up the next day and go figure out how you're going to make yourself better so that you're always improving and you're never threatened by the successes of someone else. What would you say, Tito, you've learned the most from the different leaders you've worked with in the different facets of your career in all these industries? How has that shaped the leader that you've become?
Like you said, we learn from the good ones or learn from the bad ones. And I think one of the biggest things that I learned is to basically lead by example. Like Brad was saying, how did other coworkers? So when I started, there was obviously managers that were there before me, right? So within that year, I actually surpassed them. I actually got to level 4, while many of them were still at level 1 and 2s. And not necessarily because they couldn't do it. The way it worked was the more hours you put in, you would literally take a test. You had to take a test. And you passed the test, you moved up a level. My thing was, for whatever reason, I just had that drive. Somebody told me no. I'm like, yeah, okay, watch this. So I was constantly saying, hey, can I take my test? Hey, can I take my test? And it was like, are you sure? Because if you fail, you got to wait like 3 months. I'm like, yeah, let's go. So I made it up to that level. And one of the things that I learned was even the floor staff that came in with me. I mean, you're talking about 16, 17-year-old kids, right? None of these guys are trying to make this a career. But I saw that and I was like, the GM can make 120,000 a year. I'm like, okay, right? And that was back then. I'm like, okay, that's still not good. That's still not bad today. So a lot of them, I was the type of manager and the type of leadership that I didn't know back then, but I was always lead by example, because I remember when I was the floor staff, the managers would come in, huge movie theaters. You guys remember Lord of the Rings when that one first came out?
Oh yeah.
I was I was in the trenches back then. I mean, lines out the door of the box office, right? So the managers would come in and we were cleaning the auditoriums. They'd come in and clap. Come on, guys. You know, we got to get this clean. Fast forward, when I became manager, I would take my tie off, take my coat, put it on the chair, and I would say, guys, whoever can beat me, I'll give you star cards. Star cards were like these employee things, were like, it was like money. If you had enough star cards, you can buy video games, you can buy stuff on the company little, you know, the things that they gave away. So instead of just being a cheerleader and clapping, you know, I got my, you know, I got my suit on and I'm clapping. No, I would like go in, because I did this just like them. So I would actually like engage them and say, hey, if you can clean this row faster than me, we'd go up and down. You start at the bottom, I'll start at top. We'll see who can clean the most amount of rows. And if you beat me, I'll give you star cards. So what that did is that encouraged them, right? Now you got the employee trying to beat you. Now they're trying not to just do it as fast as you, but they're trying to do it better than you, because you just gave them something. Even if it's right in the moment, you gave them that goal that's attainable. And that's how I led my staff. I also never told anybody what to do. That was one of the biggest differences also when we had management meetings, that they would say, hey, so-and-so doesn't listen to what I say. They don't do what I tell them to do. I'm like, oh, that's funny, because I don't have a problem with that employee. They actually always do what I ask them to do. And I learned that. It sneaks up on you, but there's a difference between telling somebody what to do and asking them to help you out. You know, and I never told an employee to do something that I've never done, right? Because I've been there, done that. And you're talking about some stuff like somebody does something real bad in the bathroom, you know, those are the worst, right? So I never told anybody. I said, hey, my approach is always, hey, listen, I need your help, right? And they were like, oh yeah, Mr. Viramontes, what's up? Because they enjoyed working with me. They liked helping me. I was like, hey man, I need your help. Can you do this while I do that? Right? Never had an issue. Where the other managers, we talk about some of the bad leaders, is it was always my way or the highway, right? There's a difference between being a boss and being a leader, you know, and that takes us back to that poster that I know Brad's got up in his window,
Yeah,
in his office, right? So I didn't know it back then, what skills I was developing or how I was going to use this in the future. I mean, I thought I was going to be a GM, and that's what I thought I was going to do for the rest of my life. But that's, you know, kind of like how it started. And that has always been with me, even when I went to the car industry. When I left that and I went to the car industry, I mean, I helped people become desk managers, but yet I was never promoted, right? But I was behind the scenes helping them,
right?
And then I never got the position.
So Tito, take us down the path of how you transitioned then from the car industry to mortgages, and how you met Tom.
So the funny story with Tom, him and I both worked at the same dealership around the same timeline. We never met each other. He was an F&I, but we had a mutual friend. So way back then, this mutual friend exited I think it was around 2008 when everything went crazy. It also went crazy on the car side, not just the mortgages. But that mutual friend is now a small broker in his own shop, but he exited the car industry and went into mortgages all those years ago. At that time, I didn't know, you know, couldn't see myself doing commission only. I was like too young, too scared to do that. So fast forward, I left the buy here, pay here world after 10 straight years. And I'll be honest with you, pay was cut. And I was like, you know what, if I'm going to make less money after 10 years, I'm going to go make less money somewhere else. And so I started exploring options. And one of the things that, and I say we, because when I was still working for this company, he was actually thinking about mortgages. And he said, think about it, Arturo. It's not a car. They can't hide it, right? If you try to repo a car, they can hide it. But it's a house. It might take us a little bit. It might take a while, but they're not going to hide the house. And so he had this idea of building a portfolio, becoming a lender himself. So That started in 2017 because I started the mortgages in 2019, and I started doing research for him, right? Because I did all the research. I helped him open up stores in California. I helped him open up stores in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I did all the research about getting the licenses, doing that. So that's what first sparked the interest in mortgages, was doing research for him, for that company, to see what he needed to do to get licensed and all that. And when we agreed to disagree after that, I kind of still had that in the back of my mind. I said, you know what? I was like, what if I just did it for myself? Like what? Like what? And I started taking the test again and doing all the course. I ended up doing solar for about 10 months because immediately after I left him, I didn't jump straight into mortgages. I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't know what I was going to do. It's not like I definitely didn't have it planned to leave. I don't think anybody really does when you're comfortable with the salary. It's like, and I went into solar, which was similar underwriting to what mortgages have. You have to be the homeowner, and all that stuff. I did solar for about 10 months, but kind of like you mentioned, I bumped it heads with the manager. I think she thought I was trying to take her job, where I was really just trying to work. And when I realized that this solar thing wasn't going to work out, that's when I started, okay, you know what? Let me get my license. I said, I've been talking about this for 2 years now. I was like, I need to stop talking about it. I need to start doing it. So that's when I decided to take my license. I ended up taking the test in December of 2018, and I passed. And as soon as I passed, I was like, peace out. I left. And I reached out to that old friend of ours. He actually was my loan officer, helped me with my first house and my second house. And he was retail. He was working for CNN Mortgage. And I'd reached out to him, and he's like, actually, because by now he had opened up his own broker shop. So I was actually his first, if you want to call it, junior LO, because it was just him and his buddy, both multiple years in the industry. But I was like their first loan officer that he hired. And about 5 months later, he gave me somebody's phone number. He goes, hey, can you give this guy a call? He needs some help. I thought he was giving me a lead, but he gave me Tom's number. And Tom was like, yeah, so Tim said that you just got your license, and really, where do you go? You're like, what do you do? I was like, yeah, go to NMLS. You have to create an account there, register, do this, do that. Here's the link to the classes that I took. Da, 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 da.
Look, it's exactly the way your relationship with Tom is today. Hey, Tito, how do you do this? Here, let me walk you through.
Yeah, so that's, again, I thought he was handing me a lead, and he gives me the number to Tom. So, and then it wasn't too much longer where Tom actually came and joined, and that's how Tom joined. I think our fellow buddy must have called him, put this idea in his head, recruited him. And sure enough, about May of 2019, he came into the branch, and he was coming in every day just like me, both brand new LOs where we didn't know what to do. We sat there and twiddled our thumbs for a while, and I was like, hey, dude, let me tell you what not to do, because I've already messed some shit up. I was like, so, let me tell you what not to do. And that's how we met. And him and I just kind of, helped each other with loans. Like, hey, I got this customer. What do you think? And we just started working together ever since, and continued to work together.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that story. I love how you guys met. You were at the same dealership. You didn't meet each other there. And so mortgage brought you together.
Yeah.
So then you transitioned from that company somehow, right? Because you guys ended up at Nexa.
Yeah. So one of the things, again, two brand new LOs, we relied on each other heavily. I remember one of Tom's first loans, and this goes back to me telling him, he was talking about pull credit. He was excited because he got approved eligible. But then I heard him speaking to the branch manager, and I heard FHA and all that stuff. And I let them finish their conversation. I said, hey, can I ask you a question? He goes, yeah. Is your borrower married? He goes, yeah. Did you pull the wife's credit? He goes, well, no, the wife's not going on the credit. It's just the husband. I was like, I know, but you said FHA, right? He goes, yeah. I was like, so again, I was brand new, but I knew enough that you got to count spouse's debts on FHA. I was like, well, bro, I'm pretty sure you have to pull the wife's credit, not because you got to put her on the loan, but you got to count her debts. And I was like, but don't take my word for it, right? Go back to so-and-so and ask, right? So he goes back in the office and he asks, and he goes, oh yeah, you know what? Yeah, you're right. So that was kind of the moment where I realized that maybe these guys, I get it. They're busy, right? They got their own pipelines to work on, but that's where I kind of noticed, you know what? They're not really looking at our files the way they would be looking at theirs, right? If it was their loan, they wouldn't forget a guideline like that, you know? So that's where I kind of was like, you know what, this is just, they're great guys, but it's not what was promised, right? Training, they knew who we were, obviously. They knew we were brand new to loans, to mortgages. So the training that was promised was definitely under-delivered, almost to non-existent, to be honest. And Tom and I just relied on each other heavily. The transition from that one to Nexa was Tom and him eventually just had a falling out. And it was like the next day, walked in the office. Tom got all his logins, everything cut off overnight. Like not even an email, not even a phone call, not even a hey, this isn't working out. They had their altercation during the day. Everybody went home. Let's level off. But that night, access got cut off, everything. And the next day, it was like nothing ever happened. And I'm like, aren't you going to tell? Because now we had Tom, we had Tito, we had Mark, so now he had about 4 or 5 other LOs. It wasn't just Tom and I. And he had 2 processors, 2 in-house processors. So it's like there's people in the office, right? And you walk in the next day, like nothing happened. And you're going to go to Fuse the next week. And you're not going to say anything about what happened with Tom? Like just nothing?
Time frame this for us. When was that?
That was in 2019.
Yeah, it would have been Fuse 19, which would have been right around, I think it was like October of 19.
Yep.
I didn't go. It's the first, I didn't go. I went to the
September, October of 19.
Yeah.
Because it was right before Fuse, and the owner went to Fuse. Again, he went to Vegas like nothing happened. And that's when I thought, you know what? If this happened to Tom, it's going to happen to me. Because honestly, I thought he was better friends with Tom than he was with me. Because they were both in F&I together. I never made it to that stage. So I'm thinking that Tom's better friends with him than he is with me. I'm like, if that can happen to Tom, that can happen to me. This is just a ticking time bomb. I had already received messages on LinkedIn from Nexa. I just ignored them. My answer, they offered me more money. And my honest answer at the time was, listen, I'm not looking to make more money. I was like, I'm comfortable where I'm at. And I said, we have great leaders and great mentors. And I said, it's not about the money. Right. And that was before this all happened. So I already had Nexa in the back of my mind because people had already been reaching out. So I went to their website. I started looking through it. And when this happened with Tom didn't know what to do. He didn't know where to go. So I gave him that suggestion. I wasn't the only one that suggested Nexa because now we had, you start to gain, start getting to know other people in the industry. And so I wasn't the only one, but somebody else also mentioned Nexa. And it just so happened that in the building where we were in the first floor and there was a Nexa office of the 4th floor. So it was like within a week, he was already interviewing upstairs. And obviously I'm curious because I'm like, this is, again, if this can happen to you, this can happen to me. So he was the first one, and he was kind of forced, right? He had no other choice but to look somewhere else. And so as soon as he joined, then I was like, you know what? Yeah, I see where this is going. I was like, I'll just let me finish up my deals and I'll be right behind you. So that's kind of how we ended up at Nexa. I let him know that, hey, listen, I think I'm going to make a change, And he said, I appreciate you letting me know ahead of time. Totally appreciate that. I'll see you back in 30 days.
He didn't see you back.
He told you that you couldn't do something. We know what that means.
We know what that means.
He's like, I'll see you back in 30 days. And I was like, okay. I was like, sounds good.
So that's very interesting. So you guys really weren't that close at that time, even when you transitioned. And now, somebody coming in from the outside and meeting you guys now, you would think you've been friends since you were in high school together. So it's very interesting how close you two have become. What do you think the reason for that is?
I just think we both have similar beliefs, similar values, similar work ethic, not to mention we're both Tauruses. So
Yeah, but you are also yin and yang to one another, very much the way that Brad and I are, where, we talk about this all the time in just leadership and companies and teams. And, one of the most important things to do to be as successful as possible is to recognize your strengths, but also to recognize your weaknesses. And we were just chatting about this yesterday. Sometimes when you recognize your weaknesses, the solution isn't to go and try to learn and become an expert at the things you're not the strongest at. Sometimes the solution is to find somebody whose strengths are your weaknesses, and pretty good chance their weaknesses are your strengths, And when you combine forces, when you're aligned, when you're able to communicate and collaborate together, I think that then you can really propel yourselves toward results that are much greater than you would have either achieved alone. And in fact, more than double that, because now you're super efficient and everybody's playing to their strengths.
Sure,
and I know, at least from what I've observed, I've obviously been friends with you guys for a long time, but now having the, privilege of really working with you is I see that. I see where you guys bounce off each other, and where one person's like, I don't know how to do this. The other person's like, don't worry, I got you. And back and forth all day, every day on things. And I think it's awesome. And I think that it's largely why your branch has become so successful. We issued a challenge to do this Jumpstart program for the LOs. And as of about an hour ago, the Arizona branch is at 100% attendance. 100% of the loan officers in the Peoria branch said, I voluntarily sign up.
It's voluntary.
I'm voluntarily opting in to level up and to put in the work. And that really speaks to what you said, which is leading by example, right?
Yeah,
leading by example. And I think it's really interesting. Another observation I was just thinking about, I wonder if you realized when you were working at the movie theater that you were actually honing your sales skills by the way that you interacted with your employees.
Absolutely not, because I'm telling you, I was like 16 years old. It was my first job, and I was so shy during high school. I didn't talk to anybody, and just sitting there selling tickets or selling concession items, you have to talk to people, right? Like you have to. You have to take their order, and don't get me wrong, it was more than a fun job. It was obviously I took a lot from it. I had customers that would come in and they were regulars. Like I knew what they were going to order before they stepped in front of me, and then they would leave me tips. And I'm like, who gets tips at a movie theater? I don't know.
Well, but there you go, Tito. I mean, and you think about it, when you became a supervisor and you then had to start expecting things from others. So you went from being the colleague to the leader of these people, at an age where none of us are at the height of maturity when we're in high school, right? And what you realize quickly through a combination of you as a person and your human nature of just kind of doing the right thing with or without the credit, you also quickly realized that the best way to get buy-in from the people who look to you isn't to run a dictatorship, but it's actually to lead by example, to be willing to roll up your sleeves, to show them in your actions more than your words what the right way to do things is, and never tell them, but instead ask them. And if you've earned their trust and if you've earned their respect, then when you ask them, they're going to raise their hand every time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that is a skill that's not easy to teach. So, this has been terrific, Tito. We've really enjoyed learning more about you. I mean, literally, there are things, little gems there that I really never knew. And it gives me newfound respect for you. I mean, that's a heck of a path from movie theater to cars, to the car business, and then into mortgage. And to see what you've accomplished in such a short period of time since you've been in mortgage. Thanks for joining us today.
No, absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me in.
Get Real 411 is hosted by Brad Rice and Jamie Kavanaugh, produced by Stuart Jellin, and recorded live from the Amerifund Home Loans studio in Simi Valley, California. You can learn more about the show at getreal411.com and watch full episodes on YouTube. If you're interested in being a guest on Get Real 411, email booking@getreal411.com. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.